My buddies have always been oddballs. They all chose manly occupations like construction, forestry, and working on oil rigs. In our little group of high school friends, I'm the bad guy. I entered IT. They always insult me for working on nerdy things, and I always return the favor. Me not a fan of computers. I make holes. Even though I seem like a strange addition to their circle of friends, it somehow works. We are currently in a bar. On one of the few times when everyone is back in town, we are getting wasted and telling horror stories about the workplace. Someone recalls how 3 individuals were killed a few years ago when a portion of their oil rig blew up. Tommy, a real lumberjack, recalls witnessing a man working nearby get his arm completely severed by a log line. One fast zip and a limb was in the air. As the man bled out, stuttering and whining in anguish, he pressed a shirt to the cut until a life flight arrived, 2 hours too late. I'm sitting there the entire time, aware that I have a story to tell. But it's not the kind of story I often tell to a group of inebriated sort of friends, or to anyone for that matter. It's the kind of memory that is so genuinely frightening that you worry that if you mention it, you could give it life. Make it more realistic by feeding it in some way. I keep it trapped and dangerously at the back of my mind and don't think about letting it out. Before now. I'm just sitting there as everyone speaks already. Looking protected, seeming plain. I thus disregard the voice in my head that says, "Don't." My throat is getting dry and tighter, but I ignore it. Don't. I have one. They appear astonished when my voice trembles. I'm taken aback. They all gaze at me incredulously and amusedly. The looks suggest, "Go on then." And that's what I do. On our 30 acres outside a tiny Alaskan town, I conduct business from home. No children live with me. A college town, that is. A little liberal arts institution with only a few hundred students, yet the center of the community. The campus is enormous, and the surrounding scenery is a major lure. The university is bordered by reservation territory, and the tribe essentially serves as park rangers for the hundreds of miles of forested pathways. On the other side of the campus, my property borders a portion of it. One day, I'm outside on my property's cleared edge, directly behind my home. About 200 yards separate it from the home. While watering a row of raised beds I have close to the tree line and simply taking in the hot, beautiful day, something strange occurs. A few hundred feet into the woods, there comes a sound like a recorded voice speaking. It's similar to when someone speaks to you on a faulty cell phone connection, just fragments of the words get transmitted, and the rest is simply noise, but you can know the words are intended to be said. It says, "A, theg, ta, ga, gay." I simply stood there, interested but unafraid, listening to the noise. Not even the hose was turned off by me. Looking back, I believe this is the reason it took me so long to start freaking out and taking it seriously. Such strange, mysterious events take place late at night in the middle of the woods. Not when you're standing in your backyard at 1 in the afternoon. It abruptly comes to an end after about 30 seconds. Then, in order to determine whether it really ceased or just became quieter, I turn the water off. Nothing. It's a small quirk that I store away. Something that will either be forgotten or mentioned in passing at a later time. My first regret was that. Move forward a few weeks. I'm out for a trek near the back of my property on a track I started last summer, which is now largely overgrown. I'm simply taking in the wonderful midsummer weather as I stroll, mind wandering among the trees. When I hear that strange sound in the woods, I am startled out of my thoughts. There is the sound of mangled human voice in the distance. But the woodland around me seems strangely calm. I don't like to take many risks, and I normally prefer looking crazy to dying. I turn and slowly make my way back to the trailhead since I don't want to startle any large predators by running away abruptly. What in the world is that noise, anyway? When Tommy comes to visit in 2 weeks, I make a decision to take him with me to check it out. I'm back at the trailhead 2 weeks later. I'm by myself because Tommy abandoned me. I assured him that after I passed away, I would visit his apartment and terrorize the living daylights out of him. I'm gazing along the forest trail that seems innocent enough. I prepare myself. I make sure I have bear spray, a new Bowie knife that I don't know how to use, and my rucksack. Just a sound, she said. I move on the journey. After traveling for about an hour and a few miles, I start to notice that strange sound in the distance. It's just off the side of the trail and 100 yards or so ahead. However, the forest sways and rustles in that comfortable, soothing way as though it were alive. I continue. I put my hand to the hilt of my Bowie knife as I move closer to the source of the sound. The sound is now about 20 feet away, but its origin is not immediately clear. There is a distinct crackling sound to it, but it is still the same stream of incomprehensible babble. I notice a tiny black speaker that is fastened to a tree about 10 feet above the ground when I look up. Ha! I remove my hand from my knife and look it over, feeling rather satisfied that the speaker is not a threat. The words Forestry Department and the name of the nearby college are written in white paint on the speaker's side. Ah, a hint. And a plausible justification. Oh, right. You prickly jumper. I return home satisfied that I won't need to stab anyone or haunt any apartments today. The next week, on a slow day, I give the college's forestry department a call. Yes, the dean, please hear from me. I'm not a student, I say. They are unaware that I am phoning, so no. The dean spoke in a bored tone when he responded, but he appeared ready to address my concerns as if I were the highlight of his otherwise unremarkable day. It turns out that the speaker is, or was, a kind of live art project where students could compose and record poetry that would be read aloud in the woods. Although it is solar powered, he thought the speaker's connection had broken. Someone was meant to come out once per semester and add fresh MP3s to a waterproof MP3 player that was placed close to the bases of each tree. He continued by saying that the surrounding tribes' protest forced them to abandon the project. He initially refused their pleas to remove the speakers, but when complaints persisted and the college's vice president became concerned about deteriorating relations with the tribe, he eventually intervened. He had claimed that when they went to pull them all down, they had likely missed my station. Problem resolved. The hiking season goes off without a hitch. I choose to join the speaker on another trip on the trail around a month after the snows finally start to melt. I have some equipment for overnight camping with me, and I intend to set up camp a little distance from my turning point. About an hour into the presentation, I almost missed the speaker. Now there is pure silence. I pause to give the electronics a little prod, but nothing immediately stands out as being incorrect. Over the winter, the brittle connections seem to have finally worn away. I keep walking down the trail. After around 2 hours, I've prepared a basic camp and pitched my tent. Since there are still a few hours of daylight left and it is late in the day, I choose to move ahead of my turnaround point for a little distance. I decide to take a short detour that climbs and may offer a pleasant view. I've only been walking for a little while when I start to daydream. I'm just enjoying the first warm weather of the year while basking in the late afternoon sun. I've chosen the ideal time to investigate. Wow, this is really nice. I have a thought. I then hear that recognizable, disturbing sound of chatting in the distance a short while later. My mind is still interpreting the noise as something harmless as I pause on the route. Even from a distance, I can hear that this sound is a little different and of higher quality than the first speaker. As I get closer, I have to stray from the track a bit in order to make out the words. I can clearly make out the words because the crackly sound is certainly lacking. Just as the dean described, it is the sound of a woman reading poetry. I choose to take a brief break by sitting on a rock close to the speaker, getting my water, and being less agitated than I originally was. As I sit there, I'm taking in the voice reading the well-known poems along with the sounds of the forest. But it's still a little unsettling, so after a short while I decide it's time to resume moving. I place my water bottle in my bag and get up to go. I then recognize the other voice. These insane, absurd remarks are being uttered nearby by someone. Curious but not yet terrified, I perk up. It has this odd, warbling sound in the wrong places, like the normal rise and fall of pitch in a sentence. Like when a sentence's random words are turned into questions. If you weren't alone in a jungle and far from help, you might giggle at the sound. As if turning a switch, The forest surrounding me falls silent completely. In front of me, the sound can be heard following through some dense vegetation. I'm completely motionless. Just taking in this insane noise, which sounds like a huge, bass-heavy baby voice under my breath, I say. What the hell? My meditation is interrupted as I catch a brief glimpse of something moving through the undergrowth. My animal instincts propel me rushing back toward the trail, slamming my conscious mind into the backseat. Before I even know what I was running from, I'm already careening back down the trail. Then it dawns on me. A wall of insight. A huge, towering cloud of unflinchingly frigid realization. I truly falter. My brain's neurons fire slowly. Just before the release, and then the fall, the ramifications are building in my head like a slowly condensing water droplet. I breathe out sharply and quickly as my chest constricts. A hand appeared. It seemed like a long, monstrous hand reaching through the undergrowth. To match that warped voice, a body. Then, directly behind me on the path, I hear it once more. It murmurs, "What the fuck?" Like it is experimenting with a new phrase that it has just learned. But it has this strange, beseeching aspect to it. Fuck. Running now? Suck suck suck. My feet are flying down the narrow wooded route in the sweltering late afternoon sun, scarcely touching the ground. As I carelessly and mindlessly rush along the trail, tree branches are slapping at me. The entire dash back to camp has me on pins and needles. I enter a clearing with my ears perked and chills all over my body before slowly making my way into camp with my palm delicately resting over my Bowie knife. Where the main route divides into several smaller tributaries, I can see my tent in the nearby tiny clearing. The tent is partially open and is positioned in the shade. I halt and linger over it. Packing things up would take roughly 10 minutes. I think about it for a brief moment. Nope. I'm back on the main trail and moving once again. I'm maintaining a steady jog, but after a few minutes, I come to a stop because I hear something new. I don't hear anything. A silence that is deeper than anything else. No distant birds, no leaves are rustling. No gentle wind or crickets. There is only total, strange silence that is almost stifling. It feels like a huge glass jar has been dropped all around me. There is a thick layer of woodland sounds one moment, and the next, thump. I am in a void. I shiver. I can hear my heart racing, but aside from that, I am as motionless and silent as the trees surrounding me. On my perspired skin, the air feels hot, motionless, and dead. Like being in a deserted attic in the summer. My mind wanders to a strange idea. I had the feeling I shouldn't move. People frequently have the impression that they are being watched, but this isn't quite the same. Not at all like being observed. It feels as if I'm being scrutinized. Additionally, my gut is telling me to blend in and follow the lead of the insects, birds, and trees. Wait and be still as a board. Take their lead. You don't run away from this. Follow their lead to survive. I therefore wait. In the middle of a step and a breath, frozen in an awkward position. Not even blinking or looking around. I gaze through the wooden slats like a store mannequin in the closet as something dreadful peers back at me, attempting to determine whether I am a real mannequin or just a pretender. This force and I exchange that kind of stare for 10 seconds. The fear is making my brain spin. For 20 seconds. My heart is racing frantically, and my lungs are begging for air. It still looks at me. The look is abruptly interrupted. Its attention is elsewhere. The need for oxygen in my brain causes my vision to become as little as a pinprick. I hear rustling leaves in the distance. It approaches me so slowly. Not a creature's rustle, but a huge, communal exhalation from the forest. Once more, the sound of the jungle sweeps past me. I crouch down, place my hands on my knees, and add a heaving gasp of my own. The rest of the journey back is spent in a state of tense terror. Although I try to maintain a forced calm, I jump at every twig that snaps since I know I can't run forever. I set my speed for 2 hours into the early evening at a vigorous hike. By the time I return to my land, it is beginning to grow dark. My friends are all slack-jawed and motionless at the bar. After 5 minutes, no one has touched their beverage. I carelessly run the fingers of both hands through my hair while my entire body trembles. I felt as though I were looking down a gun's barrel. A gun that I couldn't see, but I knew was there, and I knew that if I had even twitched, I wouldn't still be alive. I would have been detected by it. It would have realized that I was real. I add, taking a sip of my beer and observing my companions' shocked, distant faces, and I never went back for that tent. My attempt to lighten the mood is met with a few hesitant, half-hearted chuckles, but aside from that, nobody seems very interested in anything but their drinks, the table, or the floor. Finally, one of them says, "Shit, man." "Yeah." I then retort, "Yeah." Until we settle our tabs and leave the pub, we're all remarkably silent and uncommonly reflective. On the way out, one of my friends approaches me and queries, "Was that actually accurate?" "Everything, I simply squint while gazing up at the starry Alaskan sky. I eventually find the words I'm seeking for. Nobody can explain some of the crap that is out there. Things that have no names, and I believe that occasionally, someone will come across one. The fortunate ones, like myself, who are intelligent, get to share their story." He gives me one more long look before nodding and heading toward his car, as though satisfied with my response. "Night," he replies. "Night," I utter. Naturally, I don't let him know there's more. I don't tell him that the thing that was looking me down in the woods was a monster rather than some ethereal, invisible force. Lanky, hideous, but somehow human-looking thing. Although it had a man's shape, it was not a man. That day, God gave me 2 gifts. One was keeping the beast out of my field of vision, and the other was saving my life. After that encounter in the jungle, I worked non-stop on my studies. I learned about the mutilated body the police discovered in the woods and the missing homeless man. Nonetheless, pieces of a corpse. I also learned about a group known as the Akadexidi. My meeting with the grandson of the shaman who urged the university to remove the speakers came about as a result of a follow-up call to the dean from the neighboring university. He and I met the following day. I'm not sure how well I can describe it. My perspective differs from that of my granddad. Mel claims. I eagerly follow up immediately. Try me. Are you aware that nearly all living things share some DNA? Like how we all share a common ancestry if you go back far enough. Even completely unique things like bacteria. I don't believe the Akadexidi are included in that family tree, though. I believe they originate from somewhere else. He sort of waffles, possibly anticipating my doubts. Possibly 2 days ago. He is unaware that I have strong reasons for not being a skeptic, though. You know, these things aren't a joke. With his fingers encircling a frappuccino, he informs me. People at the campus think my granddad is nuts. Only because of his reputation in the tribe did they pay attention to him. But despite their affection for him, the majority of the tribe also believes he is crazy. Do you believe he is insane? I query him. Regarding the Akadexidi? He appears solemn, and I'm surprised by his sudden seriousness for such a young man. Although he appears to be somewhat casual, the weight of his gaze suggests wisdom beyond his apparent age. No. He is not insane. Because I witnessed one, he is not insane. I was maybe 13 at the time, which was about 5 or 6 years ago. I was riding my ATV through the woods, weaving in and out of them as I went too quickly. I was a foolish child back then. I made a lot of bad decisions. Anyhow, I'm in these really open forests where it's simple to see far away, and I spot this animal lying down there. I turn my ATV to approach and can immediately identify it as a deer. I cut the engine as I approach it and simply roll to a stop about 20 feet away. Because its back legs aren't moving and it is moving by using its front legs, I believe it may be wounded or suffering from some other condition. I go to get my knife thinking I'll have to murder it. This thing's head just snaps towards me as soon as I reach down. And by that, I do not mean that it made a sound, looked around, and then turned to face me. It suddenly jerked its head in my direction. He is obviously choking a little since he is clearing his throat. It didn't appear to be right. It seemed as if someone attempted to create a deer but lacked all the necessary components. It was twisted and gangly, glaring at me with those vile, bulging eyes. And I had the impression that it was attempting to understand who I was. Trying to identify who or what I was. Absolutely still. And a few seconds later, it simply turned and continued to drag itself away. I exclaim, "Wow," in wonder. I pushed my ATV back to the home as quickly as it would go. My grandfather first explained the Akatexiti to me at that time. They are evil spirits that spawn deep in the forest, he claimed. They are drawn to living things. Noise, sight, and other like things. When they come across something living, they sort of imitate it, but not before disassembling it. After copying anything, they look for more to improve upon their copy. I'm not exactly sure why. Simply put, he told me this. They are typically not harmful. The shaman go out and take care of it when one occasionally manifests as a dog, deer, or other animal. Huh, what happened to the person you saw, then? They ventured outside in search of a real deer. Once caught, they delivered it to the Akatexiti. Making them duplicate something that is already dying is the only method to make them die. We forgot about our drinks and sat there in silence for a while. I observed one. What? With amazement, he says. And I believe I understand why your grandfather requested that the speakers be removed. What he was scared about actually occurred. Wait, go more slowly. What are you referring to? There is an actual human Akatexiti somewhere. We arrive at the trailhead behind my property a few hours later. There is now just about an hour or so of actual daylight left until it gets dark. Nearby, a group of shaman from Mel's tribe can be heard conversing quietly with one another. About a dozen ladies and kids can be seen behind them, some of the women are sobbing. What's going on, Mel? I ask in hushed tones, but he beckons for me to wait while the shaman's circle disperses. Mel's grandfather, an older man in his early 60s, approaches us as we approach the trailhead. He passes us on the route without speaking to us, he just nods his head in our general direction. Despite his advanced age, he exudes a wiry kind of strength, and the war paint and feathered clothing he is wearing give him a threatening appearance. As he moves, I can see a decorative stone dagger on his belt. Then I start to speak. When is he returning? Mel simply gives me a glum expression. He won't be returning. Then, Mel's earlier comments resound in my ears. Making them duplicate something that is already dying is the only method to make them die.